Hello, Blenders, and welcome to episode number 182 of Real Blend, a podcast that's really been a deep fake all along. On this week's show, Christopher Nolan lands a new studio. So long, Warner Brothers, and hello, Universal. The Eyes of Tammey Faye is going to be dropping, and we're going to have director Michael Showalter, who worked on The Big Sick, but also directed The Eyes of Tammey Faye, as this week's guest on the Real Blend show, which is co-hosted each and every week by Kevin McCarthy of Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. Hi, Kev.
Sean, Jake, Gabriel, good to see you guys.
Good to have you back, my friend.
Gabe got it.
And Jake Hamilton of Fox 32 in Chicago. Hi, Jakey.
Sean, you have a second place glow about you, sir.
We have the same record, Jake. That's it. That's all.
I didn't say that as a slight. I meant it as you and I are atop our fantasy league, sir.
Jake and I are in the same fantasy football league, and we both dominated. We might have the two best squads in the
give me a high five
in the entire division. There we go, high five.
Yeah.
Until we play each other. Housekeeping.
Oh, could you? The show that week. I looked it up. I think it's like week 7, so we have some time. But the show that week.
Yeah, we got to put a good bet down on that one. Think about it. Think about it. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello. Nice to see you guys. Make sure to go down, hit subscribe, turn on your notifications. We post all of our full shows here, and we also have video interviews with the people who are nice enough to stop by. If you want to join us and you have not been over to that page, it's youtube.com/RealBlendPodcast. Of course, we're available all the different places where you get your audio podcast needs met. Have you signed up yet for Real Blend Premium? And if you haven't, why the heck not? Because every week you get a Monday show, an additional show from us with some fun games that are usually involved in it. You get a newsletter written by me every other week, and an ad-free experience. All right, to get the premium episode, go to cinemablend.com/realblendpremium. I think it's worth signing up for. It's usually entertaining. Like this show, it's usually entertaining. Kev, we're going to do the weekly poll, because this is a movie that has... Well, I don't know. It's dropped a little bit of a bomb in the middle of the Real Blend text thread.
Right.
Because of our reactions to it. This is James Wan's film Malignant, which came out last week. And it was on HBO Max, and it's in theaters, and it has some complicated plot twists, which we are not going to get into right here. But I wanted to, or actually Gabe put this one together, and he said, what did you think of Malignant? Kev, I want you to answer what you think our audience said, and then I want to hear from you. Okay. We gave them the option of James Wan's best, a good horror flick, wasn't for me, or too scared to press play. Where do you think the people went? I'm
going to guess our audience went with a good horror flick.
Okay. Close, wasn't for me, got 42%. And a good horror flick got 32%.
Okay.
So close. Yeah, pretty close. Okay. 13% went with James Wan's best. And that's interesting. That's interesting. I don't know if I'd go that route. But Kev, take it away. What did you think of Malignant? And we're going to keep it spoiler free.
I mean, I absolutely loved it. At the end of the day, I think the camera work in this movie is absolutely beautiful. And like one of the things that James Wan does brilliantly, and you can see this in The Conjuring, and you can see this obviously in a lot of his films, primarily in The Conjuring, is just the way he moves his camera. There's a way he shoots houses that is like so Wan-like in terms of the way he films that. But I loved not knowing where this movie was going. And I think that's kind of like the beauty of what this film did for me was, I mean, I'm telling you right now, that third act, which again, and then we were discussing this before the show, it's not a spoiler to say the third act is crazy. That's kind of been like the big selling point of this movie, is that don't spoil it for anybody. Don't say what it is. We're not going to say what it is. But it's an incredible third act, like and it's insane. So
it is insane, and one of the things that I find so intriguing about it is that I was a little bit giving James Wan a hard time going into it with the marketing of like, if you don't show it to people or you hold the embargo the night before, people have become really sophisticated with the fact that might mean it's really bad. But that's not the case with this, and I do think that some people who are judging it as like over the top and corny, I think they're missing the fact that he did all of that on purpose. Purposeful,
yes. Like
what that's what I think is so masterful about it.
I agree with you. Like there's a camp element to this film that is designed, I believe, on purpose. Like as I was watching the first two acts of this movie, every single decision that came off, quote unquote, like campy or cheesy, I felt was a director choice. I didn't feel that it was like bad acting or like bad script writing. I genuinely thought everything was designed in a way for you to be taken on a different ride in terms of horror. And like, I had never seen a film like this before in terms of the horror genre. And that's why I use the Upgrade example, that because Leigh Whannell, for people who aren't aware, Leigh Whannell and James Wan, they came up together, they did Saw together, and then Leigh Whannell went on to do amazing films like The Invisible Man. But in this particular instance, I've never seen horror used in this particular way, and it's so incredibly smart and unique and fun, and I'm glad it wasn't ruined for anybody, and that's kind of why we're not ruining it for people, because it's genuinely surprising, shocking, and just downright awesome. It's an awesome horror film. It's very well done.
I think he sets the tone of it too in the opening 5 minutes.
100%.
Like that scene is so off the charts, gonzo and funny. That
it almost feels like Sam Raimi doing Evil Dead.
Yes,
Malignant is just on a different scale. It's just masterful in terms of the way he works that camera. Juan,
you know what it is?
So good.
It feels a little bit like you would call it like a student film,
or
like a first time filmmaker trying everything, but it's made by someone who is a master at the field.
Sure, agree with you 100%. There's a master class
sequence where someone's escaping a building and is leaving out a fire exit, where you just go like, okay, I can call this movie a B movie all day long. I was watching it and thinking, oh, this is him doing like a wacky B movie. But then there are some sequences, some tracking shots, some exterior shots where you just go like, this ain't shot like a B movie. Like it might meant to be written like a B movie. It might made to be felt like a B movie, but it's made like an A movie, and it's made by a director who knows how to make an A movie. That being said,
this is the conversation. Go ahead.
I'm not sure it's actually a good... Like, look, I had a blast. I had a ton of fun. When the third act hit and I realized where we were at, I just threw my arms up in the air and went, cool, let's do this. Let's go fucking nuts. You're like, you want to get nuts? Let's go nuts. I'm not sure it's particularly a good movie, though. Like, and here's what sort of bums me out about it. Like, had fun, super glad I watched it, really cool. Not sure, like, I'd pop it on again. Like, when I do horror. Of all of his movies, like, I've watched his first Conjuring 1,000 times. I would turn on Saw 1,000 times. I have Insidious on my list of like movies I want to rewatch in October, because I do a different horror movie every night. I feel like I'm kind of good on Malignant. I just like the camp was a little too much. Like I agree with you, Kevin, in that like I think a lot of the lines and the decisions and like the zoom in on the murder weapon and all that like was all on purpose.
Yeah.
But it was still. It was just too much for me to enjoy.
Well, it was cool because for me, and I saw someone tweet about this, like this is a filmmaker who is, I would argue, past making this type of film in their career, if that makes sense. But to utilize the tools this filmmaker has and the ability of the budget that he's able to get because of the films that he's made, there's something special about watching a guy essentially make what would come off maybe as like a first or second movie in a filmography, but make it like with tools that are absolutely insane to use. And like, it was almost like watching a kid just kind of play in a candy store. And he was just like, playing around with all the different things and to me, like the brilliance of it is that it is all thought out. It is all planned. It is all meant to be the way it is. I mean, I don't know. To me, it was just, I love that it came out of nowhere. I knew nothing about it. I just popped up one day and we were talking about it on here. Like, oh, Juan is a brand new movie out called Malignant. Yeah. Cool. And then there's obviously Dario Argento references and elements like that. I mean, to me, like, if you haven't like seen Suspiria, like the original Suspiria, like there's so many like interesting elements here that Juan is playing with, where he's paying homage to classic horror, but making a film on a level of a filmmaker that we haven't seen make a movie like this before. It was really cool.
I'm gonna go one step further. This is gonna be on a level for me of From Dusk Till Dawn. I want to show it to people who have never seen it.
That Dusk Till Dawn's a great way to put that. Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah, but From Dusk Till Dawn is so much better written.
Oh, I mean, yes. That was Tarantino. Of course, but
I'll grant you that.
But it's still
like I get the comparison, but I think
because that
are you saying that they're on the same level in terms of quality?
I'm saying no. I'm saying part of the fun of going back to Malignant is going to be bringing someone who has no idea what it is.
But also, like the Dusk Till Dawn was a good reference because, like for example, the bit of like going through Quentin's hand to see a shot or something like that. Yeah. Like it's goofy, but it's all done in the world. And I think that I would argue that From Dusk Till Dawn is probably a really good tonal example of what Malignant kind of plays with in terms of like different styles of horror, because Dusk Till Dawn's two movies at the end of the day. You know, it's a crime thriller about two people going across the country and murdering people, and then turns into a horror film at the end of the movie. And I think Malignant just kind of goes insane with its material.
Let me ask you something. Up until the third act gets crazy, what did you think of the film?
I dug it. That was the thing.
I was in before
I
needed the third act to save it.
See, what's interesting is the third act was almost like the sprinkles on top of the ice cream, and the sprinkles taste damn good. I enjoy, like I was already digging the even though you eat the sprinkles first, like it doesn't make sense because you to get the ice cream.
I'm following you.
But you know what I mean. But I mean, in terms of like, there was something about the third act that just complemented the whole piece, and it just brought the piece together. And I was in before the shift, and like and it's a very, very obvious and gigantic shift this movie then takes. But it works for me. I don't know. I thought it was a very good movie. I definitely don't look at it just as like a piece of camp. I thought it was a solid horror film.
It's clearly made by someone that just made a studio $1 billion superhero movie and said, "This is what I want to do. I dare you to tell me no."
And his thing too is he could just do Aquaman movies for the next 10 years if he wanted to, and do nothing in between.
He did this in between just to play. Just like he literally woke up, probably was like, you know what? I want to make a really cool horror film. I'm just gonna knock it out before I do Aquaman 2. I mean, this movie came out of nowhere. Did you guys know anything about this film until a couple of weeks ago?
Not really. No, not really. One film that we do know a lot about is The Eyes of Tammey Faye, especially for me down here in Charlotte. I mean, Jake, you were saying the fact that you weren't that familiar with the story beforehand, but
I didn't know who she was, and particularly based on having seen the film now, when I realized when it took place, I'm like, okay, it kind of makes sense why.
Yeah.
I didn't really hear about this story.
They were like tabloid fodder on a national level to the way that like O.J. Simpson was for a period of time, especially like during his trial. Like when they were getting into all of their scandals and a lot of stuff that the film to me didn't get that deep into. I mean, a lot of stuff happens to Jim Baker, and it put the two of them front and center on things like the National Enquirer, not quite Time and People, but the supermarket tabloids basically. So Michael Showalter is tackling this story with Jessica Chastain and Andrew Garfield, and he was nice enough to come by the show to sit down for a Real Blend interview. So without further ado, the Real Blend interview with the Eyes of Tammey Faye director Michael Showalter. Well, I have to start here though, Michael, because it's very rare I get a chance to do this, but I'm actually based in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina, where you guys filmed. in the backyard of Jim and Tammy Faye, and so I just want to know, like, what filming here, being able to tell this story here in this location, how it impacted whatever prep you were doing, and then just, the production in general.
I mean, it was awesome. We got a chance to go and like walk around Heritage. The Heritage is right over the border in South Carolina, and so we got to go see a lot of where the actual story takes place. And then also just being in Charlotte, I mean, everybody has stories, everybody of a certain age, either knew, was their parents were PTL members, or they were PTL members, or they worked at Shoe Barn and Tammy Faye was a regular customer, or, Dillard's, she was a big shopper at Dillard's. And there's like that Italian restaurant in the mall that she goes to. We actually mentioned it in the movie.
Okay. Is that type of stuff just invaluable as when you're building a character and when you're building a world?
I mean, I think it helps you feel. I think it helps you. For me, I like to create like that. You said you're building a world. You're sort of in make-believe land, and the more you feel like you're immersed in that, the more lost in it you get. That being said, and so, I mean, it was amazing to be able to shoot the movie there in the South on these locations. And it's not just, you know, the houses or something, but it's even just the grass, the trees, the air. By the same token, having done many projects where we aren't where we are, you know, I just shot a TV show that's coming out soon that's set in New York City. We shot it in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
But there's something exciting too about creating an environment somewhere else too. You kind of build that world somewhere else. So it kind of goes both ways. But I had an amazing time being in Charlotte, and not just for the way it, you know, just creatively, but also just it's good to, you know, it's a fun town. Like I just, you know, we had our routine, we got our routines figured out and all that stuff.
You know, Michael, I'm really fascinated in terms of filmmaking here because we're going in such an interesting timeline and we're watching the characters age. I was wondering, because you shoot movies non-linearly, generally speaking, and if you didn't do that here, I'd love to hear that. But I'm curious, were there days where Jessica and Andrew would be in multiple ages at one point in the day, and kind of how did you navigate that? Because they're both aging so much throughout the film.
Yeah. No, but it's a great question because of the prosthetics, they could only be in one age per day. So the amount of time it would take to have Jessica be Jessica in the 60s to then have her be Jessica in the 80s, we wouldn't have enough time to do that. So she was always in one look on any given day.
That probably helps emotionally, I would imagine, like in terms of her character arc, to be able to do it almost in order, basically, kind of, right?
But she might be, I mean, we definitely tried to shoot it as much in order as possible. And that definitely did. I do think that helped. I mean, I don't know if it helped. Yes. I mean, helped is a strange word. It was interesting to start the movie with them falling in love and to see how that affects the vibe on set, which is like everyone's in a good mood, everybody's having fun, everybody's getting along. And then as the relationship starts to fall apart, all of a sudden it's kind of tense and everybody's not getting along so well and everyone's not in such a good mood. When you have actors like Jessica and Andrew who are, you know, so committed to the work they're doing, the experience of making the movie as you're going on the journey with these characters, there is a little bit of like, oh, this is like, we were having so much fun when they were like just on the road preaching, like, can't we go back to that? You know? Yeah. And it's like, you know, now they're stressed out and they're estranged and problems are starting. And so you kind of feel the weight of that, but that's really cool. You know, like that's part of the process.
Well, and to that end, Michael, I'd love for you to talk about this because prior to the movie finally being seen by people, I think we were curious as to how it was going to play, like what the tone of it was going to be. Because I feel like with this material, if you lean, you know, one direction or the other, it could be spoof if you wanted it to be, you know? And so could you talk about some of the conversations you maybe had with even Jessica as a producer, just for the tone you were shooting for and how you got to it?
Have you guys, I'm assuming you guys have seen the film.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, I think I think we all agreed that it could be entertaining and it could be fun and funny at times, you know, some of the ridiculous outfits or the song, you know, the disco Jesus and that kind of thing.
Sure.
But we always knew that we didn't want it to be making fun of her or, being cartoonish or campy or any of those things. I think we all wanted that to explore these characters as real people and to allow them to have humanity and flaws and everything that comes with that. And so that's very much was the tone that we were attempting to achieve.
Because I'm in my 40s, and to me, the Bakers were tabloid fodder, for so much of their existence. And it was halfway through the movie or towards the back half when my wife turned to me and she's like, I feel really bad for Tammy Faye. That was the sentimentality that was brought forward in the film.
She's a human being. She's different than the perception.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Michael, I was interested in asking this because the makeup is so interesting in this film because it is so heavy in terms of what you have to do to the characters, and it looks so real as you're watching it, but you shoot digitally. And I wonder, when you shoot digitally and you actually have aspects of different time periods, were you adding grain at all to your film or to your movie to kind of give it a time period aspect? And was shooting digitally, since the cameras are so HD, was that ever a concern that we would see the makeup at all? Because as an audience member, you don't, but I wondered in terms of the cameras if that affected any choices you made in terms of post-production. I'm
going to quickly answer that question because I don't have it too much. I'm not so super knowledgeable on the technical side. We definitely added grain. And sort of shooting the makeup was always on our minds, how to light it, how to shoot it, in any given scene, how does the makeup look? I mean, there's, and of course, digital touch-ups also, because there's certain scenes where, on the day we knew, oh, well, you can see a tiny crease there, or you can see a tiny piece of the prosthetic is lifting up or something, but you just know that's going to get fixed digitally. And you kind of go in knowing, and the digital fixes isn't it's not CGI. It's just a tiny little alteration gets made to hide, but that's any movie just about that has prosthetics is, going in, you're going to do a fair amount of digital fixing, not unlike you would in a fashion magazine when you're doing a photo shoot and they're doing, touch-ups in Photoshop. But going back to your other question about the spoof aspect of it, and you and your wife, were you expecting it to be a spoof, and or were you hoping that it would be that? When you went in, were you sort of oh, it's Michael Showalter, it's Tammy Faye Baker, I'm kind of hoping that it'll be making fun of them, and then having to realize over the course of watching it, oh, it's not that. And I guess my question is at what point was it literally only until halfway through the movie before you realized that's not what it was going to be?
No, that's interesting. I think I might have jumped to the conclusion, not spoof, but more comedic. Maybe because of the marketing.
Tanya.
Yeah.
That's very a little bit.
Well, because there's the relationship with the mom, that's hinted at in the marketing, and the difficulties that they were having being on the same page, and almost the mom being sort of judgmental of Tammy Faye, that almost passing a judgment of whatever Tammy Faye is trying to do. She has that attitude of what did you get into now sort of thing.
Right. But
I thought very early on, through the performances and even through the way that you portrayed them, they weren't misguided. I thought that Jim he ended up having good ideas, and he ended up they were a good pair working together for a while until they lost their way, I thought. So it was more grounded. It was more human than I guess I anticipated going in. And again, it goes back to just what I remember about Jim and Tammy Faye. I just remember seeing them on the pages of the front page of the Inquirer, and the way that she was portrayed by the media, which I think becomes an interesting commentary towards the end of your film, where you talk about that and how, she almost tries to rebel against it.
Yeah.
Michael, just a quick thing, because it is 2021. It's 20 years since Wet Hot American Summer. And I just wanted to know reflections back on that project, and kind of what you learned from that project that you could even utilize here making a film like this.
Oh man. I mean, I didn't direct Wet Hot.
Right.
And so much of it was the first movie that I'd ever made. And so I think I got to have the experience of seeing the filmmaking process from the beginning to the end, and kind of knowing what that is, what all goes into that. And it's obviously, you know, you talk about going back to this idea of a spoof and It's like that movie really is a spoof, and sort of like, even though there's some kind of sincere, heartfelt moments there's always that sense that we know we're making a movie. We know this is a joke. And so I think if you know, what's been interesting for me sort of in my career has been sort of learning how to take those quotation marks off the work, and to not give into that part of me that does want to kind of wink at the camera, even though there's always going to be a part of me that, I mean, I do like, one of the things that I do like about this is that there is like a show within a show quality to it. It's about making television, and it's about the camera. This Tammy Faye is about the camera, and is about, in a lot of ways, Jim and Tammy Faye Baker are performing even when they're not on stage, you know, even when they're alone in their bedroom. There's a sort of a performative nature to what they're doing, because I think they always felt, in a sense, like they were being watched. But every project I do, I take something from it and bring it into the next one, whether it's something I'll do again or something I'll never repeat, you know, I'll never do that again, you know? So, but that one for me was probably just about seeing the process of making a movie from beginning to end.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that you talk about the fact that they were almost performing even when they were on their own, because there's a moment when she says, he criticizes her voice, and she says, "I thought you liked the Betty Boop voice." And from that moment on, I almost expected her to stop using it.
Right.
I almost thought she was putting it on the entire time. So that's pretty fascinating to hear you say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they have that quality. And I've known people like this who sort of like, it's like they're always they're always performing, even when there's no one there to watch.
Right. One of the conversations that's going to come out of this film, obviously, is Jessica's performance. And so, you know, even just to maybe illustrate how far she even went for you, was it extremely drastic from table read to when she finally, you know, fully realized what her Tammy Faye was going to be?
The first time that I sort of heard her doing the voice and the character, I mean, she would sort of try it out on me in little bits and pieces. You know, I think she says this. So like, we talked so much. She was very involved as a producer, not in addition to being the lead of the movie. So we were talking constantly about every aspect of the movie, and she would sort of throw out sample little, hey, I think she does this. The first time I really heard the character was when we recorded the music. So we recorded songs for the sound for the movie in June. I think we didn't shoot the movie I don't think we started shooting the movie until early November.
Oh, wow.
And so we actually, if memory serves, we recorded those songs in June. Mm-hmm. And so I heard her singing in the voice of the character. And so then starting in September and October, we started working with the prosthetics and trying to fine tune the prosthetics to find a version of that look that felt like the character. And I think it was in that process that I really started to see it sort of taking shape. Mm. And then getting the gestures, like, you know, it was really fascinating to watch it slowly come together, like seeing her in the mirror with the makeup on and kind of trying out little gestures and stuff. And it's a very slow process. And you sort of add in you could sort of see her adding it in, building it piece by piece, from starting with wanting to make sure that she looked like Tammy Faye Baker. That was so important. And then getting the costume the right way, getting the makeup the right way, the nails, every little piece had to be right.
The nervous laughter too. I love the nervous laughter. Such a brilliant choice.
Yeah. I mean, I could go on forever about that. I mean, there were little things like, the way she would like hunch her shoulder, she would eat something. And then like she would eat, she eats the Oreos. I don't know if you remember, she's in bed, she's watching Jim on the 700 Club and she's eating Oreos and she like eats the Oreos. And then she sort of hunches her shoulders. Like she loves the taste of food. And she sort of like punches her shoulder. I mean, she really was in that character's body. It's pretty incredible.
One of the things I find interesting about this, though, as you mentioned the makeup and the prosthetics, is sometimes a performance can be put down by so much prosthetics and makeup. But in this case, the emotion is coming through it. And I think that's a really key thing to point out here because it's easy to get lost in the prosthetics and let them do the work for you. So I was curious from you as a director, what conversations you have with Jessica and Andrew to make sure that the performance still came through, especially Jessica, because she's under so much prosthetics and makeup. What conversations do you have to make sure the emotion is coming through and not being oversaturated by the prosthetics?
Yeah, that was something that we were very conscious of, not wanting to bury her inside the prosthetics to where you lose Jessica. You still want to feel like you're watching Jessica Chastain, and that you can't see her underneath all of the prosthetic. And so it was something that we were very conscious of, wanting to make sure that she wasn't just putting a big giant, Freddy Krueger mask or something like that,
Yeah.
And what we ended up doing was taking some of it away. So the final prosthetic is sort of like, there were some pieces that came off so that we could see more of her. And so the sort of the final choice of the prosthetic, which grows from when she's 19 years old until she's in her 60s, was a combination of pieces and not the whole enchilada. Mm-hmm. And that was so that we were always it's like an optical illusion. It's like it's Jessica Chastain, but it's also Tammy Faye Baker. And you kind of can't tell which one you're really looking at until the end of the movie. I think you just feel like you're looking at Tammy Faye Baker. You just sort of forget at that point that it's Jessica.
Oh, the final scene, which I won't reveal, is brilliant. It's really fantastic. It's a perfect way to send off the character. We're going to run out of time very quickly. I just want to get your opinion on this, Michael. Could something like this ever happen again, Jim and Tammy Faye?
Oh, sure.
You think so?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. What do you mean? Which part of it?
The being able to build an empire on the backs of people who you're deceiving, I guess.
Oh, I mean, I feel like it happens all the time.
Yeah, I guess so. I wish we as a society learned a little bit better.
I mean, what you just said doesn't that ring a bell? Building an empire on the backs of people that are being deceived?
Yes, it does.
It feels, unfortunately, like we've learned nothing.
Yes, that's true. That's very true.
It's really depressing.
Yeah.
Depending on who you ask,
It's realistic.
But I mean, no, we're, again, depending on who you ask, it doesn't seem like we're moving forward as a society. Mm-hmm. It in some respects feels like we're moving backwards. So that's just depends on who you ask.
Sure. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Are you in Toronto? Are you up there?
I'm in Toronto, yes.
Well, enjoy the festival, and I hope the film goes over huge.
Thank you, and give my regards to everyone in Charlotte. We had such a great time. Really enjoyed our time there.
Well, thank you for bringing a production through. We're tired of losing things to Georgia, so come on back.
Okay, I will.
Good.
Be up on that.
Thank you so much to Michael Showalter for coming by the show. The Eyes of Tammey Faye is going wide, I'm pretty sure, this Friday. Yes, Kev?
Yeah, Sean, I was just wondering what you thought the tone of that interview was.
Oh, God. Remind me not to ask that question anymore. All right, yeah. You guys are on the other side of it, so I don't think we even talked about this. Was that a bad question?
No, it was actually a great question. And Gabe and I were, I think we were discussing this afterwards. It was cool to see like the interviewee turn the tables and talk to us, which is like, a really cool thing because Sean asked a question in the interview, basically what you just heard, which is like, the tone of this film, because and Sean was 100% right. There's a way that this movie could have been done where it could have been making fun of or been a spoof. And like one thing I really enjoyed, and we'll get to this in the review, is that there's a genuine heart to Tammy Faye's character in this film, and that and the human being behind the perception. So we'll dive into that. But I thought your question was great. I just love that he flipped the script a little bit, because I think he was genuinely just curious, because the people had just started seeing the movie and he was probably just wondering how tonally it worked, because you're 100% right. It could have easily been the other way around. Very true. So all right, well, we'll talk about Tammy Faye when we get later on into the show. Let's get to this week's talking points, and we're going to start with our boy Chris Nolan. Chris, as we like to call him, is
friend of the show.
Oh.
Is
shopping around
Chris.
a new film that's going to be about Oppenheimer and the A-bomb. It's a World War II film, from everything we're
which was mentioned in Tenet, by the way. Oppenheimer was mentioned in Tenet.
Like, is he mentioned early on when he's describing? They're describing? They
refer to Oppenheimer in comparison to what the person creates in the future that's going to end the world in Tenet. So
gotcha.
So like, it was that when I read that he was doing an Oppenheimer film, I was like, well, this must have been boiling in his mind for a while, because that name is specifically mentioned in Tenet, which is
And I also read that Pattinson gave him a book about Oppenheimer at the Tenet wrap party.
Yeah. Oh. So okay.
So we might have Pattinson to thank for this.
And then they're saying that Cillian Murphy is possibly dancing around the film, and
I'd be cool with that.
And I saw some photos, some side by side of what Oppenheimer looked like and Cillian, and I feel like that could be a really good casting choice, to be honest. Like, I don't know if that's true, but I mean, obviously Nolan worked with Cillian on how many of his movies? Batman Begins, Dark Knight,
almost
Inception, Tenet,
Dunkirk.
I see it.
Not Tenet.
I kind of see it.
Yeah, you see it, right? I saw someone do a side by side. So I mean, I remember. I'll never forget Cillian in Dunkirk. He didn't even have a character name. It was like Shivering Man or something. I could totally see Cillian playing that.
Like in the eyes.
We'll see. I don't know if that's true. I just read that somewhere.
But the point of the story is that Mr. Nolan no longer is at Warner Brothers, where he had been doing the bulk of his film. Not all of them. No, he started at Paramount. Isn't that right?
Well, I know. So Memento was like, I think Paramount Vantage, I believe.
Since Insomnia, I think.
Right. And really? And there's a little asterisk on that, even though that is 100% accurate, because Interstellar did open up with Paramount domestically, but it was Warner Brothers International. So he still made the film technically with Warner Brothers, but Paramount released it, distributed it domestically. So I think Insomnia is, because Insomnia came right after Memento, right, Gabe? So it was everything of Insomnia, forward. So
the point being, he's had a relationship with the studio for a really long time, and the events of Tenet, I'm going to have to assume, came between them. Essentially, the way that Warner Brothers handled Tenet, and, to be fair and to play both sides, had their backs against a very difficult wall in terms of
what is it that they did with Tenet? Was it Tenet, or was it the HBO day and date for the other filmmakers?
It's twofold. I mean,
what did they do? They busted their ass to get Tenet out in theaters.
Well, it was getting pushed back the way several other films were getting pushed back, and maybe I think they would have. I'm putting words in their mouth. I think they would have preferred to hold it the way that a lot of other films have since held it, and I think Nolan wanted to come out essentially, and I think they hit an impasse over that.
The way the Hollywood Reporter article talks about, which is what we're going to get into here with the quote unquote demands that Nolan had made in terms of finding a new studio. It sounded like to me, and again, this is all speculation, that the HBO Max thing was like was the deal breaker. Like, remember his comments were pretty brutal about HBO Max. He called it like the worst streaming service, and this was all about the day and date in terms of films coming out and releasing at the same date in theaters and HBO Max. I think the Tenet release structure and kind of how that all went down, that obviously started the ripple, I would argue, just based on what I've read. And then the HBO Max thing, I think, was a big deal breaker. That's what I gather from the overall scope of it. But again, we're reading this based on people's reports. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's interesting that because Universal doesn't have a streaming service, right?
Peacock.
Oh, I guess Peacock now.
So, like, for example, like Boss Baby,
Halloween Kills.
I think Boss Baby 2 may have come out in theaters and Peacock at the same time. Am I right on that?
Halloween Kills is about to.
Halloween Kills is about to.
Halloween Kills is doing a day and date?
On Peacock.
No, they're not.
On Peacock.
Oh,
yes,
I did not know that.
Yes, they are.
Oh, that's bad. Why?
I saw a headline that was like Halloween kills ... theaters ?
Oh, why are they doing
on.
that? Why would they just give that the 17-day treatment? Just go 17 days exclusively in theaters, then go to Peacock.
Well, because no one's heard of Peacock.
They're pushing
People
Peacock.
To start hearing of Peacock.
Well, it's and to Gabe's point, we did a story on our morning show today about they're doing the whole Fresh Prince of Bel-Air revival.
Yeah. It's a drama, right?
Yeah.
And they're just like, and they're just coming up with crazy stuff in order to get people to sign up for the streaming service. But I mean, and Sean, you can go ahead and read Nolan's terms, because I don't think this will affect Nolan's movies at all. For now,
I wanted to ask you guys these. I want to go one at a time through these. This is via the Hollywood Reporter, who is talking about Christopher Nolan going over to Universal Studios, and these are what he has to hold on to in order to make a deal with a studio.
There's one I think is a little ridiculous, and I'll let you get.
All right,
to it.
So let's go one at a time. Total creative control. It's fine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nolan-
he's
Nolan's
earned.
earned that?
Nolan.
I would argue that every filmmaker should have.
Also, and while you're reading this, total creative control basically means final cut, essentially, right? And essentially, like in terms of like casting and all. But
even
I'm
no
sure
notes,
there's some sort of
even
legalese that leads into, like, maybe he even gets final cut on trailers and like the way that it's pitched to
what would
audiences.
be fun?
Like,
This would be a fun conversation outside of this. Like, which directors do we think still hold, quote unquote,
That sounds like a bonus episode.
total creative control? Because like we were talking about, Paul Thomas Anderson has a movie coming out, in December.
the title's the best.
Do you know what it is?
It's like Licorice. I read it yesterday because they're actually playing a 35mm film print of the trailer exclusively in theaters right now. It's not online yet. It's called Licorice. I'll look it up. Hold on.
That's interesting because the joke was at in Las Vegas when we were there for CinemaCon.
Licorice Pizza. That's the name of his new movie. Licorice Pizza. Isn't that the best title ever? It's such
really
a good
good.
title.
The studio executive came out and he was like...
does that make him Licorice Pizza as opposed to Jon Favreau's Cheese Pizza?
There you go. But I mean, so I guess I'll just use this real fast. There is a theater, if you look it up online, that is playing an exclusive 35mm print of just that. This is the Bradley Cooper movie that he made just recently, and they're playing a trailer on film. It's a Nolan move. It sounds like a Nolan move to me. Like he's playing it only in theaters. It's cool.
All right. Total.
Nolan didn't actually invent celluloid, right? He just uses
that. I know, but Nolan. Remember Nolan does release trailers exclusively in theaters before they go online, which is cool.
He did for Dunkirk, didn't he?
And Tenet.
Tenet too.
Yeah.
Yes, Tenet. All right, at least a 100-day theatrical window.
Perfect.
That's the one where I go like
100 days?
No problem.
Well, just because. But the issue, Kevin, for me is that like most movies just don't make money for that long. Like it's
true. And who's to say that they're not sticking you on Theater 17? That's a postage stamp size.
I guess I just feel like by the end of that agreement, they're like fudging it to make it work.
But wouldn't his argument be the Avengers movies do? Like movies can make money for that long.
Yeah,
sure.
And this is a bit on the lower side for him in terms of budget. I think this is reportedly $100 million, which is what Dunkirk was cost to make as well.
Here's the next, and maybe this isn't as far fetched as I think, but the next one says around $100 million budget and around $100 million marketing spend.
Yeah.
The marketing spend. Do you think they match?
Usually they spend. When you see a production budget, it's usually double is what the budget for the movie is because they use the same for marketing. And then there are some instances where now they use even more. That's kind of like why people say these days marketing teams are really the creative forces behind films because they spend the most money and so they have the most power and say
and think about
you double is usually I think is normal.
And Nolan's marketing is always brilliant. Like I mean, if you guys remember the first trailer for Tenet, it was like for Dunkirk, it was like I think it was 60 seconds, and it just ended on that shot of all the soldiers looking up.
Yeah.
That was like a year before the movie came out, and I mean the anticipation that I still find it so incredible, and this is why these terms make sense to me. That he opened a World War II film that wasn't even based in an American part of the story in summer and crushed. at the box office domestically and worldwide. Yeah. I mean, you had American audiences going to a British World War II story about World War II, and it made a lot of money because Nolan's name was on it. It was that's why he deserves these terms.
Well, here's the last few. 20% of the first dollar gross. Fine. I mean, it's Nolan.
A lot of money.
And a blackout period where the studio would not release another movie for 3 weeks before or 3 weeks after the feature.
That's the one I'm shocked that
Well, that sounds like that's what studio. He's like saying, "Hey, this is a smarter idea." You know,
that's smart business news for the studio.
Oh,
why would the studio compete with itself?
Well, it's smart. Well, I guess I saw someone tweet something about this. Like, what if Universal wants to put out Despicable Me 4?
Yeah,
2 weeks before Nolan's movie.
They're not going to the same audience.
But they can't do that, according to this. So the studio basically has a 6-week window where they can't... Because Universal puts out a lot of movies. I mean, and Warner Brothers probably couldn't adhere to this, I would imagine, because they have basically a movie every 2 weeks or something like that. I don't know if he had this same deal at Warner Brothers. Some of this might have been the same. But a 6-week window surrounding your film... That, to me, is like you've earned some status as a director if you can ask for something like that. Especially on a studio like Universal, because, again, like Despicable Me 4 is a different audience. I saw someone use this as an example, and the fact that he would have that 6-week area covered... It's pretty insane. Like that's but he's earned it. Like I said with Dunkirk. I want to see
them put the Nolan Oppenheimer trailer in front of Despicable 4. The kids have to sit there.
All right, so I did just look up because I was curious because I think Dunkirk and Oppenheimer could be a pretty comparable because I don't think either so Dunkirk hit theaters on July 21st of its year, and it made, granted, it did very well opening weekend. Just that first day, it made $20 million. Its last day in theaters, before they pulled it, where it made $803, was November 23rd.
Yeah.
So that's 5 months, right? July. Yeah, right. Like that's 5 months. So like 100 days isn't that crazy, I guess. Like he got more than that without asking for it.
Well, and it was an awards movie. Like his movies are awards movies, so they get a longer run because they're trying to. Those audiences that sort of, I would imagine, are going to continue to build as hype builds around nominations.
But also, he's earned this. I mean, this is a filmmaker who is the star of his movies. Like, I would argue that Nolan can open movies better than Spielberg can now. And I'm not saying that Nolan's a better filmmaker than Spielberg. I'm just saying that the Nolan name is so synonymous with box office success. Dunkirk to me is the greatest example of that, and I've already said why. But you have to. That's a pretty big deal to be able to do that in the middle of a summer, to open a film like that and make that much money. And like Jake just said, it was making money throughout. I mean, I saw Dunkirk 6 times in 70mm IMAX.
Made money through you.
I spent so much money on Dunkirk and Interstellar. But
that 100 days is because he knows how many times you'll go see it 100 times.
See it. But
he did it for you, Kevin.
Yeah. But I mean, this isn't that crazy. And I'm glad Jake brought up that example because 100 days, and especially Dunkirk, and Gabe had a good point. Dunkirk was an awards film. That was like probably because was that his first Best Director nomination?
I believe so, because he didn't get one for Dark Knight.
Or Interstellar. I think he got...
Wait, did he get one for Inception?
I don't think he got... I think Inception got a picture nomination, but not... And then Wally...
how do you not give him a director nomination?
Wally won for cinematographer that year. I remember that.
I do think that there's... For better or worse, people kind of give a lot of flack, and, we talk about Twitter as Twitter, and people are going to say what they're going to say about whatever. But the discussion around what was going on with Tenet was about how he was being vocal because he was accepting the responsibility as a big name filmmaker to try to set a standard for the industry.
Help
and I think
theaters.
that it's no accident. Yeah. I think that it's no accident that these terms are very public and very much being covered and talked about.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that this is the same sort of move where I'm not trying to, build him up any more than he is, but I think that the fact that we have a bulleted list of what he wanted, this is less of get to my level and you can get this, and this is more like if we can do this model and this works, then this proves that theaters can sustain a 100-day window, that theaters can sustain a big budget and can sustain this sort of model. He's obviously is an exceptional filmmaker.
Yeah.
But I think that there's more strategy to it of trying to build a very theater focused idea around his films in order influenced the industry as a whole. So I think that's a large part of why we know so much about this.
Did you read the article? Did you guys read the full article?
Yeah.
About how about how he had studios come to where he lived. Basically, it's a really incredible thing that he.
You think Apple even had a chance?
I was wondering. Apparently, Apple was in the running, and I don't understand how. Because
I was gonna say, like I am kind of, with all due respect to the streamers, I'm happy he landed at a traditional.
Oh
yeah. I'm sure he wanted to, but Apple has like. Literally trillions of dollars in cash. They could have given him $1 billion and just said, "Here, make a movie."
Don't you want to see Nolan in that montage of people going to Doom for Netflix for the To Doom fan? But I'd like to welcome you all to Doom.
But Gabe makes a really good point about the public nature of this article, because I was wondering why we knew all this information, and it makes perfect sense because it basically just, again, it goes to what because to me with Tenet. And if you look at Tenet, and this is something we discuss a lot on this show, I would argue that what he was doing was trying to save theaters. And I know that people were like, it was, Nolan doesn't care about this and that. He was just trying to keep the theaters going. He was trying to keep the employees employed. He was trying to keep the movies going, even though we were in a tough time. And I think he just... That was his mindset. And in terms of the terms, the article, basically his scripts are always super secretive. So from what the article basically says is that the heads of these studios, including Tom Rothman from Sony, apparently was a big one that was involved in the negotiations here as well. They all had to go out to the Hollywood Hills, read the script for his Oppenheimer film, and then essentially go through these terms. But it sounds like from the article that he had a relationship already with the head of Universal, that he was already kind of working with her, I believe, about that. So I think her name is Donna. I don't want to misspeak on that, but that's what the article was saying. So
I pitched him on releasing it on my YouTube channel, but
you have the silver.
And I went out to the Hollywood Hills. I read the script, and I said I can offer you literally thousands of views.
Yeah, and literally. you said no because he wanted 20% of the YouTube.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And he wanted to keep it on my channel for 100 days, and I was like, I can't promise you that.
Yeah, he said no. You don't post anything a few weeks before.
Yeah, no videos for 6 weeks.
I was like, nah, I can't. I can't do that. Let's get to someone else who has total creative control, or for God's sakes, should. Mr. Steven Spielberg, who just decided on a Wednesday he was going to come out and decimate the competition by dropping a West Side Story trailer that looks unbelievable. And so I've come from not I was never at a point where I was like, I don't necessarily care for this movie, but I was like, it's Spielberg doing West Side Story. That's unusual because he loves the original so much, and is he going to be too lost in the weeds? To now, holy shit, give it all the Oscars. It looks absolutely incredible, and I really, really hope it plays as well as the trailer does, because it looks like Janus is shooting the daylights out of this. Compositions look fantastic. The cast looks perfect. Someone who, Kimberly, who listens to us on a regular, did bring up the point of Ansel Elgort only having one line of dialogue in the trailer. But I don't know. Is it? I mean, it is his movie a bit, but I kind of see it being as more as Maria's movie.
I would say when I think of West Side Story, I think of Maria.
Yeah.
And in fact, whenever I tell someone, "Hey, Spielberg's making West Side Story," the question I always get is, "Who's playing Maria?"
Yeah.
Do you think the Ansel Elgort thing is because of the potential controversy surrounding him?
I don't know. I didn't think of that, but again, Kimberly sort of tweeted, who listens to us, she sort of tweeted, "Oh, it's unusual that he only has one." And I've heard other people say, like, "Ooh, the campaign for that's going to be complicated because of his issues." I'm not as familiar with his issues. I don't know the story quite as well, but there have been people who have said to me immediately, like, "Oh, Ansel Elgort's going to be a problem." So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm in the same boat as you. I remember reading about he had some controversy, and that was like every time the movie comes up again, it's like it gets reignited somehow. But aside from the controversy, in terms of the film itself and the trailer, nobody shoots and lights films like Kaminsky. Like there is something so specifically special about the way shots look in a Spielberg film, specifically with Kaminsky as the DP. I mean, there is just it's almost like dream-like in the best film quality you could ever imagine. And we all know Spielberg shoots on film, and Kaminsky obviously does in this as well. And there's just something special about it. The moment the trailer hit, I was immersed in the world. There's just something really special about it's magical, and I don't really know how to explain it. Because you ask the question sometimes to a filmmaker, why do you shoot on film? Why do you shoot digitally? And the word that, like, I remember Abrams at Force Awakens said the word magical, and a lot of filmmakers have said magical every time I bring up film. And that's how I feel watching a Spielberg movie. There's something specifically special and magical about every single inch of his frame. And you just know that it's a master. I mean, we all agree he's the best filmmaker of all time. Like, he just has to be.
Two of us agree.
Aronofsky is like right here, he's kind right of there. Right. I mean, I love Aronofsky, but I mean, but the trailer. I'm with you, Sean. This trailer is what floored me. I'm telling you right now, there's only a few filmmakers that like make the hair on my arm stand up when I see their name come up in a trailer, like a Steven Spielberg film, or a Christopher Nolan film, or a Quentin Tarantino film, Scorsese. I mean, there's only a handful, I would argue, for me, and just seeing that name still makes me excited.
It's not even that. It was like right from the get-go. You're right. That first shot of the side of the tenement and the way that she's lit on the balcony. But then the minute it comes in on her close-up and she starts to sing, I got goosebumps.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't even necessarily love the West Side Story songs.
It's the composition of the shot. It's the lighting. Yeah. It's there's a magic to it. You feel like he's captured lightning in a bottle. Like there's
every time.
I don't know how to explain it.
Keep in mind, he's been like wanting to make this movie for 30 years. And whenever I watch that trailer, I go, oh, you've been thinking about this for 30 years. You've been playing this isn't just something you wanted to do for 30 years and then got it and went, oh shit, how do I do this? You've been planning out how you're like, I guarantee you there were some shots we saw in that trailer that have been in his head for 30 years that he's been thinking. Like Sean, you pointed out a shot. When the first teaser came out and the shadows cross each other.
Still a brilliant shot.
But Sean, you pointed out, and I'm going to do such a piss poor job of trying to explain it. But near the end, when you see the two of them and there are people moving in front of them.
Yeah.
It's just while they're my god, it's just
because he frames Ansel left as the people are going past, and right as your eye sort of adjusts to where he is in the frame, it goes immediately to Maria, and she's on the right, and she's got the crowd going in the opposite direction, and it says so much beautifully in just the composition, let alone how fantastic the gym looks, and all of it looks amazing.
So I showed the trailer to someone today at my station who is a diehard West Side Story fan. In fact, she's Puerto Rican, so West Side Story meant a lot to her growing up, one of our lead anchors. And I think she watched the trailer like with skepticism, thinking like, okay, why are they making this movie? Mm-hmm. And even when she got done watching the trailer, she was kind of like, damn, like, okay, like, yeah. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, how can you watch that trailer? And granted, like, we haven't seen the movie yet, we don't know how the movie's gonna turn out.
Sure.
But how do you watch that trailer and at least go, I don't want to see it?
Quick question. So I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it 2 or 3 films out of all of Spielberg's filmography that he's not worked with John Williams, right? I think it's Ready Player One, and there was a few of them. I was looking at the credits for this. I know Leonard Bernstein did the music, obviously, for the movie, but I don't see Williams' name on this. Does that mean...
I don't think Williams worked on it.
Right, so I was going to ask, is there... Because according to the credits, the composer is Bernstein, so does that mean, like, all the music is just kind of like is West Side Story music, and there's not going to be like a score that's been written for the film, or did Bernstein do the score? I mean, I'm trying to figure all that out.
I think he's going to have to rely on the original music. So I don't think there's been anything original.
Because Bernstein died in 1990. So but he according to this, he has the music by credit. But
Are you looking on IMDb?
Let me look. That was on Wikipedia.
Or where were you looking? Sorry.
That was Wikipedia. Hold on.
Yeah, it might just be that all the information on it is not out yet. That happens a lot before.
But do you think there's a composer? Do you think there's a composer in the movie aside from Bernstein's music?
I would imagine someone had to help arrange things. Like, I'm sure everything was re-recorded. They may have used the original written music.
Because it's not going to flow on film the way it flows on stage.
Right, so, okay, IMDb, normally where the composer's name is, it says music by Leonard Bernstein and the original music by. I mean, we obviously know he wrote the music, but he died in 1990. So I wonder if there's a
I think that information might be, it's too early. That information might just be incomplete.
Do you think Williams would come in and do it, or do you think he's going to bring in, like, someone to like.
If it was Williams, I bet we would know, right?
Yeah,
now.
I would say if it were Williams, it would be on there already.
Because I mean,
in the same way that whenever they announced, on Mangold's Indy 5, when they announced certain people were coming back, around the time they announced freaking Harrison Ford was coming back, John Williams' name was up there. Also John Williams is coming back.
They're going to get somebody very dependable like James Horner, and he'll knock it out of the park, and he'll play the West Side Story music essentially.
Yeah.
But maybe with like a new flair on it. So
yeah,
I thought James Horner had passed.
Oh, has he?
He passed. Yeah, he passed in 2015.
Then it won't be him.
Yeah. So
I'm just glad you pronounced his name right.
Horner's amazing.
That's the only thing I got right.
But I am curious if anybody listening knows. Would love to know if there's.
He went by Jim actually.
If there's going to be a composer, I would love to know like if there's going to be someone who's like putting it all together kind of thing, or it might just be Bernstein's music. It might just be his music the entire time.
Yeah,
Steve, if you're listening, reach out to Gabe. He's at a
yeah. We can set something up. We have a strict schedule, but we can maybe.
Yeah. I do kind of want to know though. I do want to know because he rarely works without Williams. Very rarely.
If we get Spielberg, we're going to promise no interviews 3 weeks before. And none after. 3 weeks after.
None after.
And we're going to run the interview.
That's where we'll stop.
The interview will run for 100 episodes straight.
That is our natural conclusion.
He's the what is the terminology in video games? He's the big boss.
He's the final boss.
He's the final boss.
He's the final boss. All right, this week in movies, I did not get a chance to see Copshop. Who got a chance to see Copshop? Jake Hamilton, take it away.
Kevin, I don't know about you. I really like the plot of this movie.
It's over the top, Western, like, it's.
Yes, but that's a great way of putting it. Basically, like, an assassin is being paid a ton of money to knock out this guy, to kill this guy. Gerard Butler is the assassin. Frank Grillo is the guy he's trying to kill. Frank Grillo does something very smart, which is purposefully get himself arrested to protect himself from this killer. Well, then the killer basically says, cool, I can do that too. So he gets himself arrested,
Butler's
and then they end up, so basically at the end of the first act, they end up in cells opposite of each other.
That's clever.
And then that's when shit gets crazy. It's a very clever premise. It's Joe Carnahan, who I actually think is a very underrated director. Kevin, I think you're with me on this. The Grey is a masterpiece. Stone Cold masterpiece.
The Grey
is a masterpiece.
The Grey is one of the greatest movies to come out in a long time. Like, genuinely.
I love The Grey.
Wait,
Gabe, you lit up. Or do you love The Grey too?
No, I made a Grey. I was
laughing at his Grey.
My Grey.
Look, I thought this was very fun. But
Joe
I would put this.
He's also directed some. He directed the A-Team. You know, like
Did Carnahan do Narc?
I like the A-Team.
Did Carnahan do Narc?
He might have. He did.
Narc was really good.
He did Smoking Aces.
Smoking Aces is the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
I thought he did Narc.
But here's what I'll say. I enjoyed this film. I do like think it like now that we're in an age of like movies coming out on VOD versus theaters, I think this would be a super fun, enjoyable like watch at home and kick back and enjoy it with like a whiskey and some popcorn or something at home. I'm not sure in the weeks that we have coming out that it's a hey, get in your car and drive to the theater and go see it kind of movie. Kevin, what do you think?
I'm going to use this opportunity because I agree with you to recommend another great Gerard Butler movie that came out last year called Greenland. Because
Greenland!
I think Butler is like, Butler's like just quietly putting out like some cool ass flicks. I love Olympus Has Fallen. I thought Angel Has Fallen was solid. London Has Fallen was terrible. But he's doing some he just kind of like hits these like random films, and some of them hit, some of them don't. And I like the ones that hit. Like Jake's 100% right. Copshop has a lot of fun qualities to it. It's super violent too. It's like it's really crazy. So,
all right, well, that's out there for you guys to check out. So is Clint Eastwood's Cry Macho, and I think I'm the only one who's seen Cry Macho. Is that correct?
We have not seen it. Yeah,
Cry Macho, and it breaks my heart to say this, is a unique kind of awful. It's like we talk about Clint, how he'll have like a hit and then like 5 duds, and you're like, what happened to him? And then he'll come back with a one that just sort of knocks you out. This is not one of those. This is spectacularly bad. And it's by a filmmaker who, and we were having a conversation about this before we got on, has just gotten kind of lazy. Like it cuts every corner possible. The script makes little sense at all. Clint Eastwood, it's made by a man who clearly thinks that all of the parts of his legacy still exist, he has 2 love interests in this movie. He's 91 years old. Like, they're about 30.
Like in The Mule, where he gives himself 2 3-ways.
So it worked in the... He goes, I got away with it in The Mule. I'm going to put it into this one as well, too.
Did it work in The Mule?
He'll keep doing it. No,
Did it work?
Didn't. No.
Was that second 3-way justified, Sean?
No, it wasn't. He also... This is the story of... He gets hired to go down into Mexico to find the boy of a guy he works for and bring him back home, essentially. That's the root of the story. And the reason is given is because Clint is an old kind of cowboy, and the boy would love to meet a cowboy and follow him home. And Dwight Yoakam actually says, like, isn't that every boy's dream? And I was like, no, it's not. I don't imagine to hang out with a cowboy. Keep in mind,
isn't this based on a book written in the 70s?
I think it is, yeah. And it is set in the 70s, but still, I'm going to argue that this kid didn't want to hang out with Clint for the better part of 2 months as they try to get back to Texas. It's just sad. It wanders. It has no real focus or direction at all. Clint scares me, and even if this is part of the performance, he looks so frail, and it's it's one of these movies where they're constantly getting pursued by the henchmen of the people who he's trying to outrun, and Clint has like 3 fight scenes. And he moves so slowly, and then they'll have like an obvious cut, like fist, and then the young bad guy he's fighting falls down, clutching his face.
Is the character also 91? Like, is the character meant to be old? Like
he's
Eastwood?
Yes, maybe not that old, but in the opening scene, he gets fired from the ranch that he's working on, and the guy's like, "Why haven't you retired already? Like, why are you still holding on?" So yes, he's kind of
like playing with that idea. Okay.
For sure, but maybe too much. It is not, and it made me sad because, and I tweeted this, like, I hope this isn't his last movie. He's getting to the age where it wouldn't surprise me if, one day we found out that Mr. Eastwood just wasn't with us anymore, and I would hate for this to be
less morbid.
Morbid.
He stopped making movies.
Because that's the thing. I don't think he will. I think he's literally going to keep going.
I kind of love that he just wants to keep going, and like at the end of the day, I'm not saying that. And we've had this discussion on the show before. I mean, he's a good filmmaker. I don't think he's a great filmmaker, but he's obviously a great actor.
Yeah. I think it's too easy for him to ever stop.
Yeah, and I think
someone's always going to bankroll him. It's not like he's spending a ton of money.
But he loves it.
He shoots them and
he loves it.
5 hours a day.
He just loves it. I mean, how many decades has he been on a movie set? Think about how many. I mean, it's been
not just a movie set, a set period.
Decades. Yeah. So I would argue that him going to a movie set's probably his happy place. Like in terms of like
has it been 3/4 of a century that he's been on?
I mean, what year was for a few dollars more and Good, Bad, and the Ugly and all those movies were the 60s, right? What was Good, Bad, and the Ugly?
What about when was
TV before that?
Gunsmoke?
Gunsmoke and all that. Like he was doing
Gunsmoke, yeah.
Black and white television. Clint was doing.
Have you ever heard Tom Hanks's story about Clint Eastwood?
No, but I'd like to.
This guy.
So I'm gonna tell this very quickly, Gabe. I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
So Tom Hanks tells a great story about Clint Eastwood because Clint Eastwood comes from the days where, like, obviously they were like on horses shooting westerns and stuff, and he used to hate whenever the directors would shout "action" because it would scare the horses and it'd kind of like throw off the beginning of the take. So Clint Eastwood used to go over to the directors and be like, "Hey, can you be like chill and just like let us know when it's time and we'll go. You're scaring the freaking horses." And he said that he still does that to this day. He goes, you'll be on set. Tom Hanks shot obviously solely with Clint Eastwood. And he said, you'll be, normally it's like, all right, we're rolling, action, let's go, action. And he goes, Clint Eastwood basically just walks up to you and goes, okay, go ahead. And then he goes, and then like when the take's done, he just goes, all right, that's enough. Like that's the Clint Eastwood, which like that I picture that entire. That is exactly what I picture when I think of like Clint Eastwood directing.
Yeah, and you know what? it's the quintessential polar opposite of the Tarantino conversation we've had, where he's so adamant about his legacy that he needs to only do one more to make it perfect.
That's an interesting comparison.
And Clint's literally just like,
I just want to do it.
Yeah.
So he's been his first credit was in 1955. So he's been on sets for 66 years.
Yeah, I
mean,
what?
Amazing.
Let the dude make what he wants to make.
And that's what I say.
And from Tarantino's perspective, I understand like I understand where he's coming from because he's just he's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, and I think that he has a certain level.
Even before he's a filmmaker, even though he's one of the greatest of all time, he's a film fanatic first. That's the bit of him only doing 10 is it's not about that everyone should do 10. It's that he wants to be the guy that only did 10 and he made 10 great movies. Like it's from the perspective of him as a film fan, not even of him as necessarily a filmmaker.
Yeah.
If you suggested that to Clint, he'd look at you and go, huh? What do you mean?
But don't you feel, guys, like, because we can all say this now, having met him and having interviewed him, whenever I think of people, and we've all interviewed a lot of people, it's special that we've sat across from him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's when you, like, that, he's one of those people that I think, like, damn. Like, I've sat across from him and had conversations about film and about his life. Like, when you think about, like, his place in, like, he's one of the last of that generation.
Yes.
Maybe in terms of, like, that era of film. Like,
and
he's
it was
one of
fun.
our last connections.
He also loves Peanuts, too. He's a big fan of Peanuts.
I love that. If you've never seen Kevin's interview with him for Sully, is that correct?
Yeah.
But I love that he's giving you gold. He's giving you great answers as a filmmaker. He just is munching on peanuts while he does it.
Speaking of Tom Hanks, that was Tom Hanks's room. That was Tom Hanks's junket room, and Hanks was like hadn't showed up yet, so they threw Eastwood into the room to do 2 quick interviews, mine and a buddy of mine's, and he just ate peanuts the whole interview, and it was awesome. I had felt zero. I thought it was the coolest thing ever that he was noshing on peanuts.
He's the best. All right, Blue Bayou. I was not able to see Blue Bayou yet. You guys take it away. Kev, what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, so we're actually going to have Justin on our show if it happens. He's a really super talented filmmaker. I'm excited to talk to him because he shot this on 16 millimeter. It's also shot on a very unique aspect ratio, which is 1:66 to 1, which is kind of what Robin Wright used actually for Land. We had Robin Wright on. If you missed that interview, you can find it on our Real Blend podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. But yeah, I mean, this is a story.
Kevin's a real company man today.
Yeah. Alicia Vikander is the star, and Justin's character. I mean, Jake, you've seen it. His character was legally adopted into the United States over 30 years ago. He has a run-in with law enforcement and is now facing deportation. And the fact that could even happen is insane. And that's kind of what the story is talking about. And Alicia Vikander plays his wife in the film. And, she's one of the best actors working today. I mean, her accent is unbelievably great in this film. I thought Justin was, we'll talk to him about it, but cinematography-wise and filmmaking-wise and score-wise, this film hits on all levels. I do think it's a little slow at times. I don't know if Jake agrees, but the performances are really fantastic. The filmmaking is great. And honestly brought light to an issue that I didn't know a ton about, specifically what's happening to his character Antonio in this film. And to me, the beauty of filmmaking, and I think you guys could agree with me, is that when you can learn something about life through film, that then makes you aware of something, that makes you want to learn more about it, and that maybe you could do something about it. And I think this specific case, where his character had been in the United States for over 30 years and faces this deportation. I mean, Jake, I won't go into details, but this third act of this film is gut-wrenching. Like, it's really, really hard to watch. And I thought that just performance-wise, they did a really good job with it. And I'm excited to have him on because it's really cool, and we'll talk about this in the interview. He shot on 16 mil, so it's like super gritty and grainy. But sometimes when you're shooting on film, you get hair in the gate. And if you look at film as it's processed, you'll see like pieces of like lint or hair he kept those in the movie. So if you watch the film really closely, like there's specific shots where the hair in the gate, he kept it in.
You gotta ask him about that.
Oh yeah. And it's really, and
what if it's just a time thing or a budget thing?
So it's just raw. It feels like it's like a raw, natural, almost like documentary style where they just shot what they shot and they got what they got, and that's what you're seeing. And like the whole concept of Blue Bayou, because the character, I believe, was raised near the Louisiana Bayou, right, Jake? I think that's the concept. So the accents are strong. It has some very, very intense cinematography. The character is trying to make money to try and pay for the legal fees to help his deportation, so he steals motorcycles. And then the way those scenes are shot are just really cinematic. It wasn't Justin in Twilight?
He's in. Which I did not remember him in those films, but whenever I looked him up on IMDb to get ahead of the junket, he's in all the Twilight films.
And I honestly didn't realize that he would. I mean, I don't remember him in Twilight either, but I don't really know much about him as a filmmaker until I saw this film, and I was really impressed, just kind of visually what he did. There's a certain tone to this film. The way it's shot and the way it's done. The only reason I bring this up is because of the motorcycles. Do you guys remember The Place Beyond the Pines?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which was like there was a great motorcycle opener in that film where Gosling rides out into like a circular pit and does this like awesome and the way they did that was really cool where it's Gosling for a second even though it's a oneer, and then they switch it off with a stunt guy with cool camera techniques. But the way the motorcycles were shot,
which is a shame because Gosling really should have done it.
Yeah. But
commit to the bit.
The only reason why, and this is such a
Get your ass on a bike.
What are we talking about?
such a random thing to bring up, but the way the motorcycles were used in this film reminded me of the way it was used in Place Beyond the Pines, even though they're very different films.
I thought the same thing. But
there's like a feeling to the way. Who's the director of Place Beyond the Pines?
Derek Cianfrance.
Yeah, Derek Cianfrance, who also did Blue Valentine, right?
Yes, but not Blue Bayou.
Right, Blue Bayou. But there's
maybe that's what it is. Maybe he saw Blue Valentine.
There's a rawness to the way Pines was done that reminded me of the way this was done in terms of just the immersive quality of the filmmaking. I was very impressed with it from a filmmaking standpoint. We
are going to be talking about the Eyes of Tammey Faye, I think, a lot through the awards season because of Jessica Chastain. I think that she's a shoo-in for a nomination. Playing Tammy Faye Baker, and she, in a way that a lot of other people haven't recently, disappears into a role. I did not see Jessica Chastain anymore. I don't know if you guys agree with that, with how 100% immersed she got into
completely gone,
but she disappears. So this story,
emotionally, and not just physically, by the way, which is important to say. It's like she could have easily disappeared behind the makeup. I don't mean to cut you off, but what you said was really important because easily this performance could have been driven by the makeup and the prosthetics. Yeah. But she comes through it all, which is to me the why she's amazing in the film.
She conveys a lot of the insecurities that plagued Tammy Faye, and part of the reason why she relied so heavily on Jim Baker, part of the reason why the two of them relied so heavily on religion. It was fascinating to do 4 episodes of Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass, which takes a very different approach to religion, and then switch gears and watch The Eyes of Tammey Faye.
That's interesting.
You guys will understand that once you're able to see both, because the tones are wildly different. The only thing I'll say about the film is that I didn't leave that movie with a better understanding of why Jim and Tammy Faye Baker did all the things that they did. They essentially set up an entire organization network of Christian televangelism, and oddly enough, it happened right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then as they kept continuing to, I thought, authentically spread the word of God, I thought they believed that they were doing the right thing initially, but the more they made money from it, the way televangelists did at that time, this is the 80s and into the early 1990s, they got corrupt. Jim Baker primarily got corrupt. And I thought the movie did a pretty good job of just like showing you all the stuff that happened, but I don't think it ever really got underneath.
Showaltering.
Thank you very much. But I don't think it got below the surface too much into their characters, except for probably what Chastain was able to accomplish. Jakey, where are you at with it?
Yeah, I was hoping for a little bit more out of the story. Like you said, it kind of felt like someone else read the Wikipedia article about them and then tried to tell me what happened. Like through like it was their interpretation, so it just sort of felt like I kind of got the nuts and bolts. In fact, whenever I went back and read about them afterward, there were some pretty big things that I sort of went, "Oh, I'm surprised they did not put that in the movie." Like there was some pretty, I think Chastain is phenomenal, and any praise she gets, I think, is entirely deserved. Garfield, I thought, is fine. I almost kind of wonder who else maybe could have done more with that role, and in turn, because those are two performances that could make each other better, and it also makes me wonder how much better Chastain could have been if she had had a better counterpart. Who I thought was phenomenal was Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah, he was really
as Jerry
good.
Falwell. He was incredible. I mean, he's great in all the supporting roles that he takes. Yeah, I thought it was perfectly fine. I thought the movie was fine, and as I often say, I feel like around this time of year, we start getting all the biopics, and I always say the same thing, which is the performance is better than the movie. That's for me. For 90% of biopics, that's the case. The performance is better than the movie, and that is entirely the case for me with this film.
I found it surprising how much heart I had specifically for Tammy Faye's character, because and like in terms of, again, I'm coming from this from an outside perspective. I didn't know a ton about the story, but the perception of Tammy Faye just based on like her makeup and just like the way that she sounded, I wasn't sure, like, and going back to what Sean was saying earlier with Showalter, with what tone they were going to be displaying here. And I just felt like the movie, again, I didn't watch a lot of the footage from back in the day. The movie just showed how big of a heart Tammy Faye had. And to me, that's what I connected with the most was the vulnerability of Tammy Faye, of Jessica Chastain's character. I do think her performance is better than Garfield's. The problem with Garfield's performance is not his emotional aspect, it's the makeup. For him...
Was he wearing a Spider-Man suit the whole time?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and
in Sean's eyes, he was.
But I thought, and I don't know if you guys felt the same way about this, I thought when I watched the movie, I believed that Chastain was Tammy Faye. But as I watched Garfield, I kept thinking that's just Garfield in old makeup.
There was one scene in particular when he was turned to the side, and I pointed to Michelle and I said, "Look, you can see the makeup line."
Yeah.
And then I realized as I was doing that in that scene, I wasn't paying attention to what he was saying.
Right.
Like I was out of it.
Garfield's makeup and prosthetics, he still looks like a young guy, because Garfield is
he looks like a young guy in old man makeup,
right? And it's almost like watching Johnny Knoxville in Bad Grandpa or something like that, even though I would argue that makeup no
say it's
I would argue
you think the Knoxville makeup's better?
I think the Knoxville makeup on Bad Grandpa is better than Garfield's makeup in Tammy Faye. And listen, but also that's not really a bad thing, because the people who do the makeup for those Jackass films are brilliant. Like that, those are like state of the art prosthetics. I mean, but I mean, the only reason I made the Bad Grandpa comparison is because Knoxville's a younger guy who was playing an older man, just like Andrew Garfield. But in this case, Garfield's character, I saw Garfield the whole time, but Chastain, I saw Tammy Faye the whole time. I don't know, I was taken by how much I felt for Tammy Faye's character. I didn't know a ton about it, and really all my mindset was the perception of who they were and what they did and the legal elements that they faced. So she passed away in 2007. He's still alive, right?
He's still
right.
He is, and he's out of prison now at this point.
I would have liked more about the trial and the media circus surrounding the trial. I feel like that was kind of glossed over.
Well, see, that's the thing. Chastain's a producer on this movie, and she didn't want to focus on that aspect of Tammy Faye's life.
It was her human
at all. She wanted to focus on exactly. She wanted to make her compassionate. I understand that, and I think that works for this bit of the story, but you could tell a totally different Tammy Faye story that would get into all that controversial tabloid stuff and the court cases and what they did to you get a little bit of it when they start to like apologize to their followers for the things that they did.
But the movie makes it seem like Tammy Faye was kind of oblivious to what was going on in terms of that.
I don't know how accurate that is.
Yeah, and so
I don't know.
I want to clarify that, because I come from a perspective of not knowing a ton about the story. So the movie makes it seem, and maybe I'm wrong on this, Sean, the movie makes it seem like Tammy Faye didn't know a ton about what was happening behind the scenes. And
right, and I don't think that's accurate.
Okay,
to be honest with you.
Okay.
I agree with Sean.
All right, well, then
like
that's the way the movie
And what's
portrayed
interesting
it.
is, any family that essentially got bilked by them is going to watch this movie and hate her no matter what, because they represent the money that they took from them. So I think you can also do it would make and there is a documentary about it. It would make a much more interesting
called The Eyes of Tammey Faye.
Yeah, that this is essentially.
I think like the mother played by the great Cherry Jones, who I love.
Oh, she's amazing.
I love her.
So good.
Is meant to kind of represent us and our skepticism.
Yeah.
Every step of the way, her mother, who is a devout Christian, basically asks it's like, you're getting all this money from people who are supposed to be donating to the church, but you live in a mansion. Like that doesn't make sense to me. And I still don't know. I know how the movie wants me to feel about Tammy Faye Baker, but I don't know how I feel about Tammy Faye Baker. I'm not sure I'm convinced.
It's worth watching for Chastain alone. Absolutely. I think we all definitely agree with that.
And if anything, just like you said, she's going to be a part of the conversation. So You're going to want to know what people are talking about.
You're going to want to know, for God's sakes. All right, Alfre Woodard blend. We're going to celebrate the films of the acting legend. Kev, why don't you start us off? Where'd you go for Alfre Woodard blend?
I was in between two, and the only reason so originally I was thinking Primal Fear because she's the judge in that film, and I'll never forget we had Edward Norton on our show, and I hadn't seen that film in so long. And to revisit that, you just forget how much of a powerhouse everybody is in that movie. That's probably my favorite in terms of I'm looking at her career. But I have just a personal story, which is not necessarily about her performance, just the movie itself. My dad was a big Star Trek fan growing up. So I remember like my dad and I, like when I was a kid, my dad would try to get me into Star Trek, and like he would love to watch the series. And then when they started bringing those like the movies out in the 90s, I know there were movies before that, but like Star Trek First Contact was the one that I remember seeing with my dad, and I have a ticket for it, and she's in that film. And I just remember being able to interview her once and show her that ticket, and like it meant so much to her that I still had that ticket. And you know, because like it's interesting because looking back on it, I haven't seen that movie since 1996. Since it came out. Like I saw it with my dad in theaters at AMC Patrick Henry. And I remember interviewing her and going through my ticket stub collection. I was like, what do I have that Alfre was in? And that was it. And just her reaction to that ticket was she was so blown away that I still had it. So cool. And it was, I don't know, to me, that's the only reason why that one would end up being my choice, because it's such a personal thing to me that my dad and I saw that movie, that I kept the ticket, that I got to show it to her like 25 years later, and what it meant to her. But if I'm talking performance, strictly performance, I mean, she has some like a great performance in Primal Fear. I mean, her career is incredible. Her filmography is incredible.
Well, you'll see what the audience picks.
She's also in C, the brand new show C. She's season 2 of C. She's in that show right now.
I haven't watched that. That's Momoa, right?
Momoa. It's like the basic premise is that everybody in civilization.
Batista's in the new season too.
Yeah, everyone's blind, right? Everyone's lost sight, and they two twins.
From what I understand, that's Momoa's group, but I don't think that's the case for Batista, who's being introduced in this. I don't know.
Okay,
I've heard it's good though. I also haven't seen it, so I guess I'm talking out of my ass.
And Francis Lawrence is involved in that, I believe.
If you can't see the people, why didn't they get John Cena?
Oh, see, that's really good.
Wrong wrestler. You're right.
It kind of reminds me of Children of Men a little bit, because
it looks like it.
It does. It looks like Children of Men.
Yeah, because the series basically is that the civilization can't see, and then twins are born with sight, and that becomes a whole thing, just like Children of Men, where nobody could be, women couldn't give, or weren't having babies anymore, and then the character gets pregnant. It kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
Yeah. Wait a second. I don't want to divert, but there's a news item that we missed this week. Sorry, Gabe, to go completely off the rails. Did you guys see that Triplets is moving forward? Ivan Reitman is doing Triplets, but he's not doing it with Eddie Murphy now.
I don't even know what Triplets is.
This is the sequel to Twins.
Like the sequel to Twins?
It's the sequel to Twins, and it's Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito coming back.
No.
And they were going to find out that there was a third sibling, and the third sibling was supposed to be played by Eddie Murphy. Yeah. For years, they had Eddie Murphy on the hook.
Okay, that's pretty funny, actually.
To do this premise.
That's a great, yeah.
Okay,
but do you need to see a whole movie, or can we just say the premise and that's enough enjoyment?
Or just do like a 30-minute short film or something like that. I feel
maybe. But after the success of Coming to America, Murphy can't do it, and so for years it was Schwarzenegger, DeVito, and Murphy, and so now it's Tracy Morgan, and now I really kind of feel like, with all due respect to Tracy Morgan, pull the plug on this.
Well, I guess
like, we don't have to.
The difference there is that
Eddie Murphy does raise the profile.
Eddie's like iconic
100%.
in every way.
I love Tracy Morgan, but like Eddie makes sense in that group, because Arnold and Danny are like legendary actors, and like I also feel like I remember reading Arnold's book. Arnold wrote a book a few years back, and I believe he said that he made the most.
I'll Be Book.
I'll Be Book. I don't know why he didn't call it that. That's actually a really good idea. I'll Be Book. That's pretty good. That was good.
Thank you.
That was really good. I don't know why you didn't call it that.
That's a real missed opportunity.
That's a really missed. But in the book,
oh my god, this show.
In the book, he talks about how much money he made on Twins, because Twins was the first. I think I think at that point in his career, he decided to take a little bit up front, or like minimum up front, and then get a percentage of the box office on the back end. And I believe he said he made the most money of his career on that film, on Twins, because he took the back end of the box office. And Twins was, what year was Twins? Because was Twins after Terminator 2 and all this stuff?
I did not expect the show to go on a deep dive about Twins.
During the Alfre Woodard section.
Yeah,
I know.
Jesus.
I didn't mean to do that. Yes, anyway, I just had to throw that news item out there. Kevin, I went with Primal Fear, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah,
because,
go ahead. And it's a great character, and
Yeah, and I mean, look, if I was picking my favorite movie that she's involved in, it's Captain America: Civil War, but her part is so small, and so I didn't feel that was warranted.
A lot of people did bring up that bit, though.
It's actually an important
role. And it's very
role.
important.
Yes, it is a very important role, but I feel like that would have been shortchanging her career if I went with that in that direction.
And you could argue, for an important role in such an emotional moment that is so small, it requires someone of her caliber.
For sure.
Which is,
that's
I agree with
very,
you.
very true.
A special piece of
Yes,
it's also why
that is
Redford's so good in that movie, too. Wait,
yep, absolutely.
You're about Winter Soldier, right?
No, she approaches Tony Stark backstage during Civil War and confronts him because her son died in the Battle of Sokovia.
I totally, that's such a great scene. Oh my god!
In the course of like
but you
2.5 minutes, she's like devastated.
No, but honestly, that's
it's a great scene. It's what triggers the launch of the Civil War.
That's
Sokovia
actually
Accords and the Civil War.
That wouldn't have been a bad choice.
But I went with Primal Fear because Primal Fear, to me, not only is it a great example of, it's a terrific story with a terrific twist that if people don't know, we won't reveal it here. But it reminds me very much of I've been watching recently The Fugitive. I hadn't seen The Fugitive in forever. The Fugitive reminds me so much of the types of movies that they made at that time, of which Primal Fear is one of them, in that there was no throwaway role. You just populated it with really strong character actors, right? Like everyone in Fugitive is good. So even when like Joey Pants gets, a scene, he knocks it out of the park because he's Joey Pantoliano. Primal Fear is incredible. Like it's mostly Ed Norton and Richard Gere, but you get Laura Linney, you get Alfre Woodard in these scenes, so that when she has that big showcase scene where she's in her chambers between her and Gere, it's everything. It's fantastic, and so I love that she is part of that ensemble. I think the movie is fantastic, and so that's why I went in that direction. Jakey, where'd you go?
I chose Love and Basketball.
Oh, that just celebrated 20 years.
I love that. My sister loves that movie, so I watched that movie a lot with her growing up. It was one of her favorite movies. She had the poster on her wall, and it's I remember even when I was younger watching that with her and always thinking, oh, that's really cool that they gave so basically she plays the mother of this character who, her daughter is super into basketball and really wants to keep playing and progress through life, and her mom's just not supportive of it. She's not supportive of that dream. And finally, there's this really great kind of come to Jesus moment later in the film where she gets to explain like why she's not supporting her daughter's dreams of playing basketball. And it really takes what could have been just a very two-dimensional, paper-thin parent's character that we've seen before, like you're not going to go, and adds this depth and dimension that really makes you go, oh, I get it. I get why she is kind of knocking her. Like it gives depth to her past, which justifies her actions. She does what I think she has done many times. You look at 12 Years a Slave, where she plays like a very small part, but fleshes it out more so than most actors could ever do. But I remember thinking really at a young age, and because I love that movie too, like, wow, she took a character that could have been nothing if it were someone else and made it not just something, but something great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. All right, audience picks. Dave Hammer, Michael Breen, John Palmer, and many, many others went with Star Trek First Contact.
That's cool.
Rachel Ho said Love and Basketball. Jake Skelly went with Heart and Souls. Megs said Clemency. Kesha George says too many to choose from, but they really liked Juanita and the consistency of her role in Luke Cage.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Her career has been extremely impressive. For next week, we're going to play hashtag Mike Flanagan blend. So let us know. Let us know your picks.
That's easy.
Using.
That's easy.
Damn you, Gabriel.
That's easy.
And why are we playing Mike Flanagan?
Because Mike Flanagan is coming back to the show. We can announce it, right? It's in the can. We did it.
It happened. It's in the can.
Yeah, so we've spoken to Mike Flanagan on behalf of his Netflix show coming out called Midnight Mass. I think it comes out next week, right? It starts streaming.
It is.
Yes.
Is it a 7-episode dump?
Yep.
I think so. It's Netflix. And it's Netflix.
The show Midnight Mass drops on Friday. That episode will drop Friday morning.
It's spoiler free.
It is spoiler free. We were very explicit. It's a fantastic. It's him and his producer and longtime partner Trevor Macy, producing partner. And there are plenty of ground rules. We're kind of just following the marketing. It's a fantastic conversation.
The first question we talk about is how difficult it is of a show to talk about.
For sure.
The conversation is fantastic, and we even allude to at the end of like they need to come back so we can talk spoilers because it's that good.
But. And we do reach a level of lunacy that's pretty much on par with Fake of Tremblay.
Yeah, if anybody
catch up on that if you haven't listened to that his first trip onto Real Blend.
We had him on for almost 2 hours, by the way. If anybody listening to us for the first time, just seek that interview out. It was 1 hour and 52 minutes. I'll never forget it. We did it during the pandemic, which I know we're still in the pandemic, but we did it last year. It was Dr. Sleep. We did it for like a Dr. Sleep.
For his director's cut.
The director's cut.
Right.
Yeah.
And we got to a point in that interview where we were talking about the Jacob Tremblay scene, which became we learned about Fake Up Tremblay and the puppet they used for that scene. And that comes up again in this interview. So if you want to be like in full context with this interview, like Gabe said, listen to the first one so you can get
that one first.
Yeah. The sequel requires it.
Using hashtag Mike Flanagan Blend, you can also email us at realblend@cinemablend.com. Realblend@cinemablend.com. And that's where this week's review comes from. Or maybe it was posted to our Apple.
This was on iTunes.
This was on iTunes?
Or Apple Podcasts.
All right, so Low Fidelity gives us 3 stars out of 5 and calls us Altman dummies. Now, this is going back to a conversation we had a long time ago.
This has been in there for a while.
And I don't remember why we were talking about Robert Altman. But I think all 3 of us kind of admitted that we'd not seen his Western, McCabe and Miss Miller.
Yeah.
And I have since then rectified that. I watched it and I thought it was terrific. But Low Fidelity writes, watch McCabe and Mrs. Miller and then I'll listen to your opinion seriously. Unbelievable. That's the whole review.
That's it.
Still gave us 3 stars.
To be fair, we pissed him off that much, but we still got 3 stars. So we must have liked.
True.
And now Sean has seen the film.
Inspired myself to go see it. So
maybe if they're still here, give us an updated 4th 5 star, add a star, add 2 stars.
Bump us
Let
up.
us know.
Give us something else to watch. Low Fidelity while you're at it.
Yes.
Our next premium episode. Gabe, can you explain what we're going to be doing on this premium episode?
Yes, our next premium episode is, I think, going to be a fun one, and it's a bit of a pilot program, is what I'm calling it. We're testing to see how the format works. We're doing a tier list of Spider-Man movies, so people at home are probably familiar with the tier list concept. We're gonna rate Spider-Man films from.
We have to come up with a collective answer. The collective real blend answer?
We'll find out. We're just going to throw ourselves into it and we'll see where we end up. But yeah, we have to agree where we're going to put it.
All right, well then I advise everybody to make a Spider-Man movie tier list on your own.
Yes,
play along.
Go check out, subscribe to Premium,
Yeah.
And there will be links in that show's description with where you can get your own tier list to play along, an image with our final tier list that you can look at, all that kind of stuff.
All right, sounds good. You can get information on the Premium at cinemablend.com/RealBlend Premium. Find the rest of us on social media at Jake's Takes, at Kevin McCarthy TV, at Sean_O'Connell, and at Gabe Kovach. The show is at Real Blend, and we will be back next week with Mike Flanagan and more goodness. So until then, West Side Story. Oh! All right.
Just like first and second place, guys.